My Lord and my God, I firmly believe that you are here, that you see me, that you hear me. I adore you with profound reverence. I ask you pardon for my sins and the grace to make these moments of prayer fruitful. My Immaculate Mother, Saint Joseph, my Father and Lord, my guardian angel, intercede for me. I'd like to think that everyone has within themselves a capacity for compassion. I think everyone wants to have that, at least to a degree. But, Jesus, when I look at the way that you acted in your time here on earth, I realize that it's not just about capacity. It has a lot to do with intention as well. The kind of intention that develops a habit, the kind of habit we call a virtue. And I think that's the part that we struggle with most, because our intention can seem so hard to sustain, even though our desire has a deeper constancy. And that intention is particularly hard to maintain when we're just beginning to develop a habit, or just struggling not to get distracted, because heaven knows that happens often enough. I see that intention present, really evident, in the way that you look at people and therefore end up looking after them. And today's gospel is a prime example. The scene takes us to a synagogue. It's really quite unclear which one, and interestingly enough, the evangelist seems keen to imply that it could have been just any synagogue. One Sabbath day, Jesus was teaching in one of the synagogues, he says, and specifies nothing more. But there you are, Lord, teaching, knowing that people need to listen to your words in order to understand the path of life. I imagine it was the typical hodgepodge of people there, some of the richer and plenty of the poorer, as there would always be more poor than rich. Some more pious than others too, of course. Some who were just there out of habit, and others, sounds familiar for sure, who were just dragged along by mum and dad. No one particularly special, since it was just the usual mob. There was someone special though, just that she didn't seem special to anyone else there. They were perhaps just too used to her. So, St. Luke tells us, a woman was there who for 18 years had been possessed by a spirit that left her enfeebled. She was bent double and quite unable to stand upright. And it seems that she's not just sick. It's not just old age and osteoarthritis or whatever you call those things. Actually, she was possessed by a spirit that enfeebled her. She might not even have been that old at all. Man, how many times do you feel like that? Actually, it's one of the things that makes people hate being dragged to church by mum and dad, funnily enough. When we feel caught by a spirit that leaves us feeling enfeebled, spiritually speaking, going to church is the last thing we want to do. Anyway, this woman's physical situation sounds like the way that we can feel about our spiritual situation. She can't stand up straight. And being bent over, how much do you not see when you spend all your time looking at the ground? 18 years like that is a long time to be staring at the mud and dust of the earth, unable to contemplate the clouds or the stars, or even the sunset horizon. Like us, when we're a little bit caught and can't contemplate the good things of faith, but get stuck in mud and dust that seems to be entirely ours in their own doing. We don't always perceive, you see, that spirit enfeebling us. Well, 18 years like that sounds terrible, and it would have been, but to everyone there, it was old news. She was a familiar face to the people there. Certainly, at least some people felt sorry for her, but she was, inevitably, just one more person in the synagogue. People knew her too well to be surprised. With lack of expectation of a cure, that is, the absence of hope for a cure, there was nothing to be done, and therefore no special place to be given her, less perhaps a place in one's prayers, and a certain place of charity in one's heart. But then, Jesus, even though you're teaching, you still noticed this woman in need of compassion. When Jesus saw her, St. Luke continues, he called her over and said, "Woman, you are rid of your infirmity." And he laid his hands on her. And at once she straightened up and she glorified God. Well, I just think about what you did. You're the center of attention, but you're still looking out for others. Not just preaching to them from on high, but thinking of them, considering them as you talk to them. I mean, it sounds so simple, even so obvious. Like, why wouldn't he have noticed the cripple? But reality is that our own tragic experience shows that we will too easily pass by those people in need. Not because we're bad, but because we're just caught in our own things. We lack that intention of looking at the others to see how they are and even do something about it. It's one of the most captivating things about your life, Lord, that you make even the most spectacular, the most impressive, seem so normal. I remember once being the recipient of just such care, a long time ago, when I was in high school. I was sitting on a bench during lunchtime one day, one of those blissfully pleasant spring days when it seems like the temperature couldn't actually be more perfect. And anyway, there I was, for some reason leaning over with my head in my hands. I don't know why, it didn't really matter. Probably I was just away with the fairies daydreaming about something. But what I was also blissfully unaware of was that my posture looked not like someone enjoying a spring day, but like someone feeling a bit down, melancholic, unhappy. Just someone who was having a bit of a rough time. I felt a gentle hand touch my arm, and I looked up, rather bemused. A girl asked me, with a smile, with all simplicity, "Are you okay?" "Well, yeah, of course," I blurted out, somewhat muddled as to why the question was being asked, but equally warmed by the person who had asked it. "Oh, okay," she smiled as she walked away, and went back to continue chatting with her friends. Well, this girl was in my year, but wasn't part of my social group. We had hardly even talked together. I went to a really big government school, you see. But somehow, for some reason, while everyone else was just lost in their own things and their own groups, this girl looked out beyond that and thought someone might be in need of a hand. It might seem like nothing. For all intents and purposes, it was nothing. But the fact that I can still recall it, decades later, shows that it was a lot more than nothing. I turn my gaze back to you, Lord, and think, that's the kind of concern for others that we'd love to have. It'd be nice to be just like you, to be able to look at people in a way that reaches so far that we're also able to look after them. Like any good habit, the way we make that intention constant is by starting, by doing. So help us, Lord, to take our gaze out of our own circle of satisfaction and look around to find people in the same way that you do, and even to offer them that simple act of care when we see them in need. And what about the other part, of course? What about when we find ourselves feeling enfeebled like that poor woman? That's when we've got to realize that it's not all our own fault. Maybe a little bit, maybe a lot, but not all our own fault, even though it feels like it. We need to put ourselves there in front of our Lord, just like that poor woman did. To be free of our infirmity, we don't want to wait 18 years. We go to where Jesus is. We go to church, knowing that being with him, he can heal us. Maybe not straight away, but little by little, letting ourselves become at peace with him will let us be healed as we also let him into our lives. Our Mother Mary, guide us both to develop that intention of looking out for others and looking after them. And help us also to let Jesus look at us and to look after us as we draw close to him, especially at Mass. I thank you, my God, for the good resolutions, affections, and inspirations which you have communicated to me in this time of prayer. I ask your assistance in putting them into effect. My Immaculate Mother, Saint Joseph, my Father and Lord, my guardian angel, intercede for me.